Welcome, everybody, to a Baseball America podcast. Shorter style today with the video. I'm John Manuel along with Nathan Rohde. And you're not going to look at us for this podcast or for this video. You're going to look at the players from the Under Armour game in Chicago who are eligible for the 2013 draft. Nathan, we're not going to talk about too many 2014s. There were two 2014s in the game, a couple of Latin American players who've been Badler will cover at Baseball America. But we're focused on the 2013 draft-eligible high school players who stood out at Wrigley Field, for better or for worse, in the Under Armour game. Let's start with the hitters. And the whole story pre-game revolved around Austin Meadows and Clint Frazier, and they didn't disappoint, especially with their ninth-inning game-winning rally. Meadows came in as the higher-ranked guy. Sounds like after the game, talking to scouts, maybe Clint Frazier won over any of the doubters who were wondering if he could translate his physicality and his quick-twitch athleticism to production at the plate.
Absolutely. I think for Frazier, he probably hasn't moved ahead of Meadows just based on the one game, but he certainly answered a lot of questions. Guys were wondering if his style of play would translate, and they noticed that he was able to stay back on breaking balls, control the barrel of the bat. That's the thing. He's got bat speed. He's got athleticism. They're just wondering if he had the aptitude to make adjustments, and I think in that game he proved it. And for Meadows, everybody still likes him. He's just an easy, natural player.
I like what Larry Boa said. Larry's not a scout, obviously, but we talked during the broadcast about Austin Meadows getting jammed. And he said you'd rather have a guy get jammed at this point. He knows how to pull the ball. He was getting the bat out. He just was almost too quick for a couple of those baseballs. He thought it was easier to coach that out of Austin Meadows, and he fisted one into center field that dropped in for a hit, almost an exact identical plate appearance later. But the triple that he hit in the ninth inning, that ball was smoked. That ball was hit hard and prompted Steve Bernhardt to compare him to Todd Helton.
Absolutely, yeah. He smoked it down the line, but when he swung, he looked like he just kind of flicked it. So he's obviously got strength and quickness in his hands.
We also had a couple of other interesting offensive players. Justin Williams for the national team and Dominick Smith. Smith hit 3-hole. Williams hit 4, although I think later in the game they got out of order one time, and no one seemed to care. It's an Under Armour All-Star game after all. Dominick Smith told us that he tries to pattern his game after Robinson Cano, and the stance looked like a Robbie Cano stance.
Sure did.
Relaxed setup. I know the scouts' comparisons to him are more Garrett Anderson. I could see that one with the Garrett Anderson. He impressed me. Justin Williams, also impressive, just with some natural, easy pop, especially during the home run derby. Were those the best guys in your mind for the national team?
I think so, absolutely. Definitely with Williams, he's got that power. He won the home run derby, and Wrigley can humble you, especially if you're going down the lines.
Especially if the wind's blowing in.
It was unforgiving to the lefties,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
Williams is a lefty, and he pulled it off. So he's definitely got that strength in his bat. I also hit with him in the cage earlier in the week, and he's one of those guys that he backspins it really well, and it jumps off the bat. It makes that really good, powerful sound. And then with Smith, he says he patterns after Robbie Cano, and you can see the looseness and the natural stroke from the left side for him. But Garrett Anderson, I think, is certainly a good person to point to in comparisons.
Yeah, Dominick Smith's at number 44 in our top 50. I didn't see a huge gap between him and some of the other hitters from a pure hitting standpoint. The other tools, we'll see. Made an error at first base, but it was an error of commission. He made the right play. The process was the right process. The result was the wrong result. I thought he was interesting. Any other hitters jump out for you, Nathan, whether when you talk to scouts or just to your eye at that game? Because those were the guys really for me, outside of Lewin Diaz, and I guess Jonathan Denny probably earns a mention for hitting the ball with some authority, both in the area codes and here.
Yes, I think Denny certainly answered a lot of questions for some guys. Obviously, they're going to still, keep their eye on him and see how he progresses through the fall and into the spring. But coming into the game, Denny was known for being a catch-and-throw guy. He receives really well. He's got a really strong arm. And they knew he had power because he's a big kid. He's really strong. But he handled the bat well. He showed that he could square balls up consistently and that it wasn't just kind of a sellout for power. He drove a ball to right center, and, he definitely handled himself well up there, and I think scouts are starting to warm up to him as a hitter.
Let's talk a little bit more about the pitchers on hand. Not a ton of velocity. I think 93 miles an hour was the hardest thrown ball. Goes to Brett Morales, who got the loss for the national team, but threw well. I mean, we talked a little bit about Brett and the story up to 93. Changeup looked good. Breaking ball looked good. He hung one to Austin Meadows. And then Clint Frazier, just the quick hands, the flick off the wall in right field. And then Connor Jones, we talked about in the game. Obvious, the National Pitcher Association ties were obvious there with the delivery, but the sinker, very firm 89, 90 mile an hour two-seamer. I was impressed with him. Let's talk about some of the other pitchers a little bit more in depth. How about Hunter Harvey, our starter for the national team, son of Brian Harvey, younger brother of Chris. What'd you see out of Hunter Harvey?
I I really liked the frame. There's a lot of projection there. And the thing with him, I talked to Steve Bernhardt, the scouting director for Baseball Factory after the game, the guy who, brings these rosters together. And he made a really good point. You go out on that mound and you're starting an All-American game. It's on a national broadcast. You're at Wrigley Field, one of the most historic fields in all of baseball. There's a lot of pressure there.
No doubt.
And Hunter Harvey hasn't really been on that stage because he doesn't do a lot of travel ball. So it's kind of a new thing for him. He's just been doing Legion. So you could certainly see why he might be a little timid, and he wasn't. He went and attacked hitters. He showed good stuff. He pitched 2 innings, and he really stood out. The fastball has projection. It's an average to plus fastball now, and you think there'd be a little more in the tank. And the breaking ball looked really good too, and he showed feel for a changeup.
He's going to test that in North Carolina. Being in North Carolina, we hear a lot about the high school right-handers in North Carolina.
He's going to
be wary about high school right-handers out of North Carolina. A lot of the veteran scouts around here talk about that. Hunter Harvey's going to test that because, like you said, the projection, big league bloodlines, fresh arm, live stuff. I like the way he pitched and wriggled out of jams. I was impressed with Hunter Harvey. I think you were also impressed with the left-hander, Hunter Green.
Absolutely. Green, was a tough look for not just lefties but righties. Hunter Green had a lot of life to his fastball. We say he only, hit 88, but for this game that was about average.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of 88s, but I was talking to one scout about him after the game, and he said, even though it was 88, it looked like 92 because hitters couldn't get good swings on it. They were behind because, he hides the ball well. He's a little bit across his body, which, that's not too bad of a red flag, and the ball just jumps out of his hand. So it's a really tough look for the hitters, and it gets on him quick. And then if you, mix in his arm slot and, the potential for a breaking ball for him, he can definitely get hitters out at the next level, and he's got that projectable frame. He's really skinny. One guy said to me, 6'4", 160. Imagine when this guy's 6'4", 190. So there's certainly a lot to dream on there.
There's a lot of good things to be said in my mind for the projectable guy who's throwing 87, 88 as a high school junior. It's probably better at that size. They're not throwing 94. That's going to lead to
Right,
injury.
we've seen that a lot recently. High schoolers throwing hard, 94, 95, and plus. A lot of those guys end up leading to injury. It's not a bad thing that some of these kids are sitting around 90 and touching a little bit higher. So we say the velocity was down, but sometimes we've been spoiled in the past, so maybe it's not such a bad thing.
Yeah, it was definitely down, but let's try to spin it positive. I'm
right.
with you. So both those guys, Harvey and Green, stand out in this game. Another guy who threw 2 innings scoreless was Connor Jones in this game. A couple other guys that we can touch on here, though. Our other starter, Dustin Driver, one of the bigger power arms in this game. He was up to 92, pretty solid frame. What did Dustin Driver do that got him in trouble a little bit, and what did he do that impressed you?
I think his command was a little off for the day. He wasn't throwing a lot of strikes, and when your command is off, you leave pitches up. They're in the hitting zone, so it's easy for good high school hitters to square them up. And then when you're not throwing your breaking ball for strikes, you have to go to the fastball. And high school hitters, they're in this game. They're good. They can hit 89 to 92 if you're not, hitting your spots. But the positives for Driver, I still see. You got the frame. You've got the fastball is pretty good, and he's got a short arm action. I think that really makes the ball jump on hitters. So it's 89 to 92, but to a hitter, it might be a little bit better than that. Just kind of the same idea as Hunter Green. But that's the other thing is it was one game, it was one outing. There's not too much you can draw from it. It just wasn't his day. So he's certainly still a guy that you have to consider in the upper echelon of this class's pitching.
And that leads us to our last part of this video, which is what do we do with this what do we make of this 2013 high school class? This is most of the best of the best. Obviously, some guys are with USA Baseball's 18 and under team. Some other guys not everyone comes to every All-Star game. But as we've wrapped up the summer between area codes, East Coast Pro, Tournament of Stars, Perfect Game, All-America Game, now the Under Armour Game, we've got a pretty good assessment of this class. it seems like the strengths, left-handed pitching, not a ton of right-handed pitching, and some really intriguing outfielders on the high school side. Are those the strengths? Am I leaving something out?
Well, I think those are definitely some of the strengths, and I think I would add in catching. There's a lot of catchers in this class that guys really like, either for their defense or for their hitting. Now
We
it's just a
mentioned
matter.
Denny already.
We mentioned
Brian
Denny.
Navarrete was pretty good in this game as
Navarrete
well.
was very interesting with his arm strength, and he has excellent athleticism as well.
And Jeremy Martinez.
Jeremy Martinez is good. Reese McGuire. So, there's good hitters, and then there's good catchers. Now it's a matter of which of those guys can combine them.
Well, you probably got to see lots of their video in this podcast and on this video that we've done here at Baseball America. We hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with much more coverage of the 2013 draft at Baseball America, baseballamerica.com, and, of course, on Twitter at Baseball America. For Nathan Rohde, I'm John Manuel. We'll talk to you next time. So long, everybody.